Hi everyone, come on down to weapons. We got all kinds of weapons. We got big weapons, we got small weapons, we got medium weapons, we got heat weapons. And that's the end of that bit. Today we are talking weapon roles for all of the heat weapons, so the sort of quote-unquote new archetype that released with Renegades. But usually I'm in a different screen. Right now we're in the shooting range because I wanted to talk about some of the differences first between balanced heat weapons and dynamic heat weapons. Something that these have in common is that both deal increased damage to powerful enemies, and I'll showcase that really quick here. So here we're just going to very quickly compare this SMG, which is a regular 900 RPM adaptive frame, to the Fast Talker, which is also a 900 RPM, but is a balanced heat weapon to have that increased damage on your orange bar enemies. This is doing 19 to the head, and this is doing 23. Just a very, very quick example. So it is actually somewhat noticeable of a damage increase. Now, the big thing with dynamic heat weapons is that they have higher base damage compared to the balanced, but the trade-off there is that you're generating more heat and you're not able to do the perfect vent. The perfect vent is only available on the balanced heat weapon. So if you've been using a heat weapon before and you maybe just haven't been paying attention to the intrinsic, and you're like, I thought this was supposed to have a perfect vent. Like, where is that feature? That is only on the balanced heat weapons. And for those unfamiliar with how a perfect vent works, in order to hit a perfect vent, you want to be reloading the weapon in between 90% and 99% heat. And I'll kind of showcase that here. So I'll just keep shooting. And right there you can see perfect vent. That gives us a much faster quote-unquote reload than we would normally get if we just shot this thing and let it overheat on its own. You can see how much slower it actually is. And the game does tell you in multiple ways when you're going to hit that perfect vent moment. You can kind of see the meter going up on the side of the reticle. Excuse me. You can see the meter going up on the side. Now it's kind of very slowly coming down. On this weapon, it's a little bit harder to see, especially because this is a tier 5 weapon, so it's red, and the meter is also red. But as soon as it starts to pass that line, and you're also hearing that noise, that alert that goes off as soon as you pass that threshold, it's not going to keep ringing at you, but as soon as you hear it, you can perfect vent. So there's multiple things on the screen telling you when you're going to hit a perfect vent. There's 3 things. There's the aim down sights meter, there's the alert, and then if you really just want to look at your ammo count, you can also do that too. I understand that's not always practical because you want to be looking at your target whenever you're shooting something, but that is how to do a perfect vent. However, you can do a reverse perfect vent, so to speak, on the dynamic heat weapons by starting to shoot the weapon after venting if you start shooting within the bottom 10% of the weapon's heat. You just saw a dynamic heat limiter pop up, which the game does not explicitly tell you about, and you can see how slowly this heat is building, especially when combined with accelerated assault, which is a special origin trait, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then if we even just want to compare a dynamic weapon to just a regular weapon here, we can showcase how much more damage it's actually doing. Remember, this has higher base and it has increased damage against powerful enemies. So we're hitting this thing in the head for 30. We actually haven't had any 540 RPM pulses in a very long time. This is the most recent one, which is from season 21. And this is doing 22 to the head. So that dynamic damage bonus does really start to outscale some of those older weapons that we've had access to in the past. And just in case anyone's paranoid about any sort of power levels, I brought this up to 500. It's still doing 22. So those are the big differences between dynamic versus balanced weapons versus just our regular weapons. And we can also showcase this with the high tyrant pulse rifle if I really want to, which I do. We're hitting for 27 to the dome. And then an equivalent would be grid skipper because these are both 540s. And we're shooting 22s to the head. Now, another thing that I do want to talk about, which is not just an exclusive thing to heat weapons, but a lot of renegade weapons, is this origin trait, accelerated assault. This only shows up on shiny versions of weapons. So essentially, a weapon will come pre-masterworked already, and if it does, it's going to give you this origin trait. Dealing sustained damage with this weapon loads slightly more ammo from reserves or removes more heat and increases damage. So we're going to do a little showcase. This is a weapon without it. And I would say the main thing for me really is just how much more time you get to shoot with a heat weapon with accelerated assault. The damage bonus you're going to see here, like we have 23. The damage bonus is going to go to 24. And I'll shoot another magazine while I'm not talking. So then we'll swap over to this one that does have accelerated assault, and you're just going to see how much longer you get to shoot with this thing with the heat going down on sustained fire. This trait is very good. This origin trait is very, very good. For some weapons, it's basically the reason why they are good. That being said, if you don't have accelerated assault on your weapons, do I all of a sudden think that they are completely worthless? No, I do not. Because, you know, yes, it is a very good effect, but it's not so good that I think it becomes, it makes every other weapon unusable. But if you get shinies, I would be giving them another look just to make sure they are truly not what you want, because these things are, I would say, somewhat rare. You know, you can get one from running the GM Vanguard alert every week for whatever weapon happens to be dropping. You're guaranteed to get a shiny version. Otherwise, they're pretty rare. So just keep a lookout. Okay, so now we're going to go talk about a whole bunch of weapon rolls. Excellent field reporting there, Datto. Thank you very much. We're back here in the studio where we have quite a lot of weapons to talk about. So I'm hoping to do a great impersonation of this weapon right here for the purposes of this video to get you guys in and out. We're going to be looking at first the M17 Fast Talker. I believe this is the first time that Master of Arms is appearing on a kinetic slot SMG. And this is not the only one. I believe the Immortal and Peculiar Charm also have Master of Arms. So if you are looking for a Master of Arms SMG in the kinetic slot, this is your season. There's quite a lot of them to go hunt down. Another thing is Attrition Orbs. Attrition Orbs has been appearing on some SMGs recently, not always in this first major perk column, though. It's tending to show up in the second column. So if you are any sort of like, maybe you picked up the Multi-Mock a long time ago from Iron Banner when it had Attrition Orbs and Kinetic Tremors, and you're looking to replicate that with like a newer weapon, this is also something to consider. The premier perk combination that people have been going for are Attrition Orbs and Target Lock. Peacekeeper Titans, I'm kind of looking at you, especially considering that Peacekeeper Antedate, that combination in the raid is doing a lot of work for Titans. Antedate does have the luxury of having rewind rounds though, so it just enables you to shoot for a very, very long time. But this is a very, very popular combo, overwhelmingly the most popular combo on this thing. That being said, would I use this for more general play? Probably not. I would use Attrition Orbs, but I would probably use Master of Arms if I was just messing around like Lawless Frontiers. Although, as the difficulty scales, Target Lock gains more and more value because you are not killing your targets within a single magazine, right? So this allows Target Lock to scale up. That being said, Lawless Frontiers, you're using your special and your heavy like the majority of the time anyway, because the game is just raining ammo on you. So how much are you even using this SMG in the first place? Other general play, if you want to rock with Attrition Orbs, I'm still looking towards Master of Arms. I haven't seen a ton of Crystalline Corpse Bloom, but it is there if you're maybe doing some slightly easier activities where you can get those rapid final blows a bit easier. Otherwise, I'm not the biggest fan of Sword Logic. And then the rest of the things here, if you want to do something other than attrition, you guys know I love Stats for All. Demolitionist is pretty good, especially if you're running a grenade setup. Cooling Baubles we're going to talk about a lot. This is basically on every single weapon here. And it is a good perk in the right situations, and we'll talk about those situations. This is also a weapon, by the way, if you are doing Attrition Orbs Target Lock, you do want to get Accelerated Assault because you're getting more ammo put into the magazine. That gives more time for Target Lock to kind of build up. So if you can get Accelerated Assault for the purposes of some sort of a DPS type weapon, you're an Antedate, Peacekeeper Titan, whatever, you do want to try to get it with the shiny. Out of your control, I understand, but if you see it, maybe hang on to it. Next up, we have the modified B7 pistol, which is a dynamic heat weapon, a stasis 180 RPM hand cannon. And so whenever we usually do these videos, I tend to ask, what's the gift that Bungie is trying to give us with certain weapons? Are they giving us a unique perk roll that we don't normally get to see? And for this one, the answer is technically no, but it's really yes. Firefly Headstone. This perk combination was available last season on the Solemn Remembrance, but that was a PvP weapon, which I'm guessing not a lot of people ended up doing. So if you did not end up doing that, this is your opportunity to now go get this perk combination. Assuming you're okay with dealing with 180 RPM hand cannons, which I personally am not in love with, but other people, they're totally fine using it. So this is overwhelmingly the most popular perk combination on this weapon, and I do think it is the one that you should probably be going for. Are there other things that I think you could do on this thing? Sure, but do I also think that you could get these other like perk combinations on other weapons if you really wanted to? Yes. Do you probably have something in your vault already replicating something similar to some of the other offerings here? Like, are you going to do like a demolitionist headstone? Like, I'm sure this combination has been made available on a different hand cannon at some point in the past, right? And cooling baubles, if you are running with some sort of a stasis setup, stasis shards can be very abundant, so this can keep you shooting for a long time, but it's also just like not really that kind of weapon where I think you need to be reducing your heat as much as you possibly can, right? And you got Rhyme Stealer here as well. We just had a stasis artifact last season, so I don't think we're going to be seeing a ton of like frost armor stuff in the artifact. I mean, obviously for the next few months we're not. Next expansion maybe, but yeah, this one I would rather just keep simple. Firefly Headstone, go for this combo, have some fun with this. And if you really want to spec for something else, I think you need to have a build ready for it. Next up, we have All or Nothing, which is a 540 RPM Strand Pulse Rifle, a dynamic heat weapon. The last time we had a Strand Pulse, I think I showed it in the field report there, was different times from Season of the Deep, Season 21, and nobody used that thing. I don't think many people use that thing, which is a shame because they use like that Taken treatment on all those weapons, and they looked really cool. But anyway, premier thing that I want to mention about this weapon is the recoil direction at a paltry 56. If you do nothing to mess with the recoil direction, personally, I did not have that much fun using this weapon at 56 recoil direction. I threw in a counterbalance mod, and my experience was made way better, and I would suggest something to stabilize this weapon a little bit more than it comes at its base version. Anyway, what are we looking at on this thing? One of the most popular combinations is Firefly and Tear. Again, more precision final blow treatments on a lot of these weapons. You're getting Firefly for the bonus damage, the bonus reload speed. You're getting Tear to sever nearby enemies. Sever, again, I don't know how many times I've said it. Incredibly good debuff to have. Now, we do have some other options here as well, but I will say that Firefly is overwhelmingly the most popular perk in this first column for a pretty good reason. These bottom four, I would say, are more tuned towards PvP type experiences. You could do Slice, you could do Cooling Baubles. Again, not really a weapon that I think you need to prioritize Cooling Baubles a ton, which would just leave Slice. And if you really want to do that much severing, I think there are other ways. You have a thread of isolation if you want to go that route where you're just getting precision hits and you automatically sever a target. So there's a pretty good reason that Firefly is the main thing here. So if you're going to scoop Firefly, you can pretty much take like almost anything here, and I think that would be totally fine. If you want to have a more utility play with Tear, if you just want to go damage, Desperado, Sword Logic, Kill Clip, maybe you're doing some sort of a strand type play with Hatchling, I think that's also totally fine. But you're probably going to be sticking with Firefly on this thing at a bare minimum, and then just speccing based on what you want to be accomplishing with your particular setup. Next up, we have Uncivil Discourse, which is a special ammo using arc hand cannon. It's the blaster that everyone's been having a very good time with. I do want to mention one thing in particular for Lucky Pants Hunters. Precision Instrument. This has been getting an absolute ton of use for any Lucky Pants Hunters out there. In terms of what to combine it with, you might be thinking Cooling Baubles. I've gotten a lot of recommendations for Air Trigger purely for the increased ammo generation. You can get the stat very high on this weapon. So I believe this is the combo with Accelerated Assault as well. If you want to be using this for any sort of Lucky Pants boss damage or single target type setups, having Accelerated Assault is going to be a pretty significant deal. So I would try to get that. I mean, again, out of your control. But if you do see Precision Instrument with Accelerated Assault, and you have like Air Trigger or Cooling Baubles, and maybe you don't land on Air Trigger, you get Cooling Baubles, that is also like a nice second place. Otherwise, I don't really think there is a consensus like best perk roll on this weapon. I think a bunch of people will say like, oh, Air Trigger is very good for the ammo generation, and they're absolutely not wrong or anything like that. Ammo generation is very strong, but otherwise, like, do you want to do damage, right? Do you want extra bonus damage on this weapon? Desperate Measures, Frenzy. Do you want to go maybe for a little more utility with Jolt? Are you doing some build crafting? Are you working around with stuff in the artifact? Because there's a couple of things that involve jolting and giving you bolt charge with arc debuff targets, all that kind of stuff. So there are some options here. There's a lot of room to play around with. There's also some PvP options as well. You want to do some sort of lone wolf opening shot type deal. I don't know. Maybe you're an offhand strike kind of guy. It just depends on what you want to do. Cooling baubles as well, if you're running with some sort of an ionic trace type setup, those can be very, very abundant, allowing you to just never have to vent this thing at all. And it's a dynamic heat weapon, so it does not come with any sort of a perfect vent opportunity. That is also, I think, somewhat of an option. So this one just depends. What do you want to do? What do you want to do with this weapon? Next up, we have the Compact Defender, a dynamic heat weapon, so no perfect vent opportunity. Void Sidearm. Last Void Sidearm we got was Insurmountable, which was episode 2, I believe. So this is the first one with the new gear tag here. What are we looking at? D-Stab Repulsor Brace is on here. It is by far the most popular perk combination on this weapon. I do have a full video that we did a little while ago going over this perk combination once these perks got buffed. And while it doesn't work exactly in the way that you might think that it works, it is still potent enough that, if I saw it on a weapon, I'd be like, yep, okay, that makes sense. Otherwise, if you're not going for D-Stab Repulsor Brace, D-Stab is definitely the most popular perk in this first column for pretty good reason. I'm not taking Delicate Tuning, I'm not taking Rangefinder, I'm not taking Hipfire Grip, I'm not taking Built to Blast for any sort of PvE type things. Maybe I'm taking Proximity Power if I'm running some sort of a melee setup, but I haven't grown super attached to this perk. And then Cooling Baubles, do I think you could take it? Sure. You have to play around it quite a lot, but I think Destabilizing Rounds is a bit too valuable to not want to grab on this thing. And then from there, you basically are just taking some sort of a damage perk, right? Desperate Measures, Frenzy, Kill Clip, Swashbuckler. Maybe you combine Prox Power with Swashbuckler if you're running some sort of a melee setup. I'm not taking Precision Instrument on a sidearm unless I'm in very, very specific conditions. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of people just picked up Destabilizing Rounds, Repulsor Brace, and just kind of called it a day there. But if you did want to spec for something else, Desperate Measures, you want to grab Frenzy, you just want to have this be a workhorse sidearm, I think that is totally fine. Next up, we have the refurbished A499. Not a ton of this experience in the game. This is like a no land beyond sniper situation in the power slot. You get a single shot on the sniper. What are we using on this thing? For any sort of like a boss damage type setup, there's really only one choice, and it's aggregate charge, dealing more damage for each debuff that the target has, each elemental debuff the target has. You should at a bare minimum have like weakness and probably sever on any sort of a boss target, or at least any target that's living more than like 5 seconds, right? And there's ways to apply Jolt and Scorch, like all this kind of stuff. So this is really the only perk that boosts your damage in some way, because this one, box breathing, you got to sit there and wait a little bit. It's not really that practical. And then Ancillary Ordnance and Bewildering Burst both require a reload after a kill of some kind, which you're not going to be doing during boss damage, right? It's way too slow and it's just not practical. So Aggregate Charge is going to be the perk that you're using for any sort of boss damage. In combination, I think people are using Snapshot to help facilitate some reload sprint cancels on this thing, which is a bit more of like an advanced technique. I think it's kind of annoying to do, but it can, boost how quickly you can start shooting this thing. So this is what you should be leaning towards for single target boss damage. Otherwise, one of the more popular perk combinations is Bewildering Burst and Envious Assassin, which is a little bewildering to me because Bewildering Burst requires a reload after killing a target, and Envious Assassin is all about killing with other weapons to cram a bunch of ammo into the gun. So I'm not sure if people are just taking it because these are just like two very, very good perks, even if they don't have synergy, and they're just calling it a day because this is like a first of its kind. The perk combinations on here are like a little weird. This is Bungie just kind of testing the waters to see like what can we get away with, what's going to be too strong, what's going to be maybe too weak, and because like Auto-loading holster, ambitious assassin. These are things that are usually in this column over here. Even Mulligan sometimes I feel like is over here. Yeah, things are a little like out of whack right now. I was leaning for a little while towards just like outlaw and box breathing, making sure that one hit is going to guarantee that kill so I can reload this thing a little bit faster. But you do also have like auto-loading holster. The problem is there's not really anything to like really combine it with in the first column because auto-loading holster, bewildering burst, they don't really synergize. And then everything, like I'm not taking gut shot straight. I'm sorry, I'm just not. And then the rest of them are just either like PvP type plays or reload speed plays, which you don't really need with auto-loading holster. So yeah, perk combinations on this thing are a little weird, and that's because they're just testing the waters right now. Do you want to just go for some convenience? Do you want to go for just like some single shot, maybe some utility play with ancillary ordnance or bewildering burst? I think that's fine as well. But yeah, it's a little weird. This thing's a little weird with where like all the perks are and stuff like that. So I think they're testing the waters right now. Next up, we're moving to dungeon weapons, starting with Conspiracy Honed. This is a 140 RPM stasis sniper. It is a dynamic heat weapon, though, so it is hitting a bit harder than your average 140 RPM sniper. And a bunch of people have been gravitating towards Vorpal weapon bait and switch with ionized heatsink specifically, giving you many, many, many more shots in order to utilize as much of that bait and switch as you can for any sort of like boss burst damage opportunities, burst damage windows that you might want to have. Ionized heatsink works for these like bursty moments because it's going to take a while to vent, but the hope is that you do all the damage that you need to do, vent the weapon at a later time, or just stow it and have it passively, very, very passively get rid of all of its heat, and then you can bring it back out for any sort of burst damage needs. Otherwise, snipers, we have this Headstone Firefly type situation, which is cool. It's kind of like a weird spin-off of like Icebreaker and what you can do with Icebreaker. It's like a diet Icebreaker, I guess. But I'm not as in love with it on a sniper rifle compared to like a primary weapon. Do I think you can get some use out of it? Yeah, absolutely. But snipers are still pretty much in that world of like, you want to use this for sustain or boss damage type setups, mainly because just rocket pulses are kind of taking that role. They've taken over that role of damage from snipers. Even rocket sidearms, we're doing a lot of that as well. So for now, I would be leaning more towards the Vorpal weapon bait and switch type setup. Or if you don't really want to deal with bait and switch, you can go firing line. But I think you really want to get as much damage as you possibly can out of this thing. So learn your bait and switches if you're still uncomfortable with doing bait and switch. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm staying with this. Next up, we have Voltaic Shade, which is an ARC 260 RPM scout rifle, so it's shooting a little bit faster, and it's a balanced heat weapon, so you can perfect vent. The only thing I have in my notes here are ARC scout rifle snore, because scout rifles, we all know where we're at with scout rifles. They're not really that great. You got to be a real scout rifle enjoyer to be wanting to use scout rifles. I do think with Lawless Frontiers, there are more opportunities now to use scout rifles because you actually can plink away from a distance and it actually kind of makes sense. You're not into these super tight corridors or anything like that, at least, most of the time anyway. So at least scout rifles are usable in something like Lawless Frontiers, but otherwise they're still kind of on the weaker end. That being said, Bungie tried to throw everything that they possibly could at this scout rifle. You have jolting feedback in the first column. You have trickle charge, which is also new. You have cooling baubles. If you're running any sort of arc setup, or ionic trace setup, which I do think you should. And then in the second column, you have Rolling Storm. I don't know how much Rolling Storm has necessarily caught on, but it is there. Volt Shot. I don't know if I'm doing jolting feedback and Volt Shot. I don't think you need to invest that much into applying Jolt, but it is there. Again, if you want it, you have Frenzy, you have Desperate Measures. Desperate Measures, you're probably going to be playing at a distance, so maybe melee and grenade kills are not as common. Mega Nora is starting to make appearances on weapons, which was like a very, very old perk on that scout rifle, Oxygen something from a million years ago. So they threw everything here. They threw everything at the scout rifle. So if you're a scout rifle enjoyer and you like ARC, you have a lot of stuff to pick from. It's just that it's a scout rifle. Next up, we have Zealous Ideal, which is a 450 RPM solar auto rifle. It is a balanced heat weapon, so we do have access to perfect vent. There hasn't been too many of these recently, and this is coming with all the premier stuff that you want on a solar weapon, right? It's got heal clip. It's got burning ambition. It's got incandescent. A lot of people are just going to grab heal clip, incandescent, and just call it a day. And if you wanted to do that, that'd be totally fine. For a tier 5 that I'm looking for, I want at least heal clip. I want attrition orbs as well. And then the third thing, I might just grab cooling baubles. I could grab Zen Moment for maybe some sort of a PvP type play in that first column. Cooling baubles, I don't know how much you need it. on this particular weapon. I know a lot of my friends have been enjoying attrition orbs on this thing. So attrition orbs and heal clip, try to get those 2 perks in that column. And then the second column, I mean, this is very, very juiced. You have onslaught here if you want it. You have one for all here if you want it. You could probably grab like incandescent, onslaught, one for all, something like that, I think, for your second column for those of you getting tier 5s, and you'd be very, very well off with a lot of options available to you. I'm going to keep this one short because it is pretty cut and dry here, what you want to be grabbing. Next up, we have High Tyrant, which is a void pulse rifle balanced heat weapon. I really like this thing, and it is juiced. It is juiced with perks. It has a lot of good stuff on here. Unfortunately, you cannot do repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds. They are both in the same column. I am leaning much more towards destabilizing rounds as the premier perk that I'm going for on this particular weapon. You could maybe do something like demo if you wanted to. You know, Void has access to a lot of Devour, so you can accelerate that even more. I don't think you necessarily need it. So destabilizing rounds, second column, you have Master of Arms, you have Mega Nura, you have Frenzy. I'm leaning towards Master of Arms. I would love to have like D-Stab, maybe Repulsor as well, and then like even like Rapid Hit I'd be okay with in the first column, and then Master of Arms, Mega Nura, and then maybe I would go for some sort of a utility play with like Withering Gaze or Demoralize in case I wanted access to something like that. But I'm primarily going to be using this as some sort of a workhorse weapon, just slaying through as many ads as I possibly can. Very, very juiced up weapon, and something that I do think is worthy of finding its way into your, at bare minimum, your vault. This thing is nice. Next up, we have Sullen Claw, which is a lightweight frame void sword in the power slot. This is the first time I believe Eager Edge is appearing on a lightweight frame sword. And whenever Eager Edge appears on a sword, it is the perk that people gravitate towards to, pretty much guaranteed. Like, everyone goes for it no matter what. What are some other things that are on this weapon? You do have repulsor destabilizing rounds if you want to have access to that combination. You do have something like Vorpal, bait and switch, although lightweight frames are not the greatest for boss damage. So this is maybe more of like a, end game Lawless Frontiers, or like end of Lawless Frontiers where things are starting to scale really high and you want a little extra burst damage. I think you could do something like that if you're running with this sword in particular. Something like Eager Edge destabilizing rounds to be able to just zip around the map a little bit faster, and then having some extra utility and a little bit of extra damage in destabilizing because you're getting volatile rounds, which is providing some sort of anti-barrier for you. So that's some nice extra tech to have for any content that has a bunch of champions in it. You can run with destabilizing rounds. That's probably what I'm going to be leaning towards, maybe like destabilizing rounds, bait and switch, and then even something like Binary Orbit, I don't feel like has gotten a ton of respect. This is a very good perk. I do think this is a good perk. So yeah, Eager Edge, obviously you're going to want to have access to that in some way. Maybe a Vorpal if you want to do some sort of Vorpal bait and switch, but yeah, those are the things I'm kind of gravitating to. Finally, we have Bitter End, which is a 900 RPM balanced heat weapon machine gun. First of this like new era, first arc machine gun of this new era. Usually I'm not the biggest fan of 900 RPM machine guns, but this one I have enjoyed quite a lot. I've been hunting for many, many god rolls. I've done many, many dungeon runs looking for the roll that I want. What is the premier thing that I'm looking for? It's probably Cooling Baubles and Killing Tally. I love Arc Warlock. Arc Warlock makes a ton of Ionic Traces, so you should be able to use this thing essentially nonstop. You should almost never have to vent this weapon pretty much whatsoever if you're using it very, very aggressively. Otherwise, we have a lot of other utility that we can put on this thing, right? You do have Eddy Current if you want to go like a jolting feedback kind of situation. One for All, you guys know I love One for All. It's an excellent perk. Rolling Storm, again, I don't know how much I've gravitated towards using Rolling Storm, but if there is a season to maybe test it out, it could be this one with a couple of things in the artifact, boosting Arc. Trickle Charge is also here as well, providing some extra bolt charge bonuses, but this is also restoring ammo to the magazine, which is providing a similar effect to Cooling Baubles, which is like reducing heat on the gun. So I'm still probably going to stick with Cooling Baubles if I'm running that like Arc Warlock setup that I really like to run, or even Arc Titan, Arc Hunter. All of them can generate a ton of Ionic Traces. Probably not running with Attrition Orbs. not running with hipfire grip, not running with gutshot straight, not running with delicate tuning. So cooling baubles, eddy current, and then like trickle charge, or maybe attrition, or like the three of these four is what I'd be looking for. And then I want to have access to jolting feedback. I obviously want to have killing tally. And then I would probably grab I'd be happy with one for all or rolling storm. I probably wouldn't be using frenzy. I'd rather have one for all on something like this. But this thing is very, very nice. I've been looking so hard for a god roll, and it is still eluding me. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Those are all your heat weapons. I hope this was informative for you, looking for those god rolls. There's a lot of good weapons. These weapons are very, very good. They're very, very good, especially if you can get them with that accelerated assault for some extra ammo, or I guess really heat reduction on your magazines to shoot for much, much longer. Yeah, it's worth finding a lot of these weapons at the very least and throwing them into your vault. Bitter End, I know, is going to find a spot in some loadouts for me, along with a couple of other weapons. I would love to throw in like High Tyrant as well. The dungeon's got some good stuff, so I would take some time to get some weapon rolls, especially if you're in that tier 5 area where you're getting them pretty easily. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.